Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with the last week of going over the book, God's Call, or Callings for Life, God's Plan, Your Purpose. We'll kind of do something exciting, talking about how this book and kind of what we've talked about connects to the resurrection for the devotion time next week. But this is, I think, a really great opportunity to kind of wrap up and really talk about how does everything that we've talked about connect with your lives each and every day. So last week we led off with the 4 sacred gifts of God-given callings, and I'd like to pick it up there, kind of talking about the first 2 again, just briefly, and then going into the other 2. And I apologize for not having a PowerPoint. My file got corrupted last night when I was trying to look at it, so we're just going to have to go with the book so please forgive me on that note. First off, and I'll try to make sure to highlight, that way you can kind of see where I'm talking about. When we're talking about the 4 sacred gifts of God-given calling, so whenever you have a God-given calling, whenever you have a right vocation in your life, you're going to be able to see these 4 gifts in your lives. They are value, strength, grace, and joy. Bang. In the first place, though, I encounter the daily have God-given value. Let's start with God-given value. Does anybody remember why value is such a big gift in our callings in life? From anybody who was here last week? Value. If you even want to break it down, why is value a gift? Well, I'm not just talking about, worth is on it, but I'm not even just talking about like your own self-worth. I'm talking about the worth of everyone around us. That every single person that we interact with in our lives, in our callings, and our vocations have worth. There's not a single person who has ever lived who does not have value. Every single person is made in God's image, is a beloved creation of God, and they deserve that honor and respect. It's very hard, I believe, in this aspect because show your hands in your jobs or in your other vocations. How many times has someone upset you in your callings in life? Wow, a lot of people are very, have no complaint about anyone around them in their callings, apparently. But when it comes to our callings, there's always going to be something that is upsetting, that is frustrating. I've been using the example of Eli a lot. It's frustrating in my calling as a dad right now because Eli is wanting that independence of eating what he wants. So we're on our way to Indianapolis yesterday, and I'm trying to, we're on our way to hang out with my dad, and I'm trying to give Eli his first Happy Meal from McDonald's. So, got the chicken nuggets, got the apples, got the french fries, and it's almost a debate just trying to get this child to eat. So I'm trying to give him his chicken nugget. He'd either turn away or he'd grab it and throw it. Then he would do the same thing with his apples. Then I'd give him a french fry and he would gladly eat that. Okay. But thank goodness I got him a couple bites of the chicken nuggets, got him got him to finish all of his apples. But in the midst of the frustrations that we have in our lives, in no way, shape, or form should, even though a situation may be frustrating to us, doesn't mean that the person that we're dealing with doesn't have value. In this situation, Eli has immense value. and that I should honor and joyfully remember that each and every day. That, yeah, I love the kid. Do I want to? do I? Does he get on my nerve? Well, yeah, he's my kid, but that doesn't mean he loses his value. The next one that we had was strength. Show of, well, try this one again. Show of hands. How many times in your vocations that you have had something that you needed help with? All right. Yes, thank you. Could you say that louder, Donna? Every, I I would agree. Everybody needs help in their vocations. Everybody needs to be able to say, I can't do this by myself. I don't know it well enough. I don't have the wisdom. When it and it's an amazing thing is in our vocations that we have people that we can rely on, and most importantly, we have God to rely on, especially in our vocations. I like the line from Pastor Leininger, because many of our God-given callings are difficult. He also promises to give us strength in fulfilling them. If they were not from him, no such promises would accompany of them. So this is something that, tell me if you've ever heard this phrase before. God never gives you anything that you can't handle. Emily, you're laughing. Why are you laughing? What a good pastor's daughter you are. That's precisely right. That, I mean, when just by reading this, and then I'll have somebody read the passage again that we read last week. We most certainly are given more than we can handle. On a daily basis, we're given more than we can handle. Because look at it from this way. If God just only put things in our lives that we could handle, where is that necessity we would have in him? Where is that need that we would, why would we need God? And why would we need to turn to God if we are only given things that we can handle in our life? Everything that we do, everything that we are, it's strength that's given from God. Yes, we have our personal achievements, and that we do feel like that we may serve in our vocations faithfully and joyfully and well. But that doesn't mean that we are able to do it on our own. God gives us what we need to serve faithfully. Now, we'll get to this part in a moment. Do we always succeed in our callings, in our vocations? No, we don't. We have failures. We fail constantly and daily. But God gives us the strength to fulfill what he has given us to do. But that's kind of, oh goodness. Going back real quick, does anybody remember the story that we read on Ash Wednesday? The story I preached on? Does anybody remember that story? I know I'm making you think about church from like 6 weeks ago. Do you remember the story I preached on? Refresh your memory. Okay, it was a story that talked about David. Did that help? Oh, I'm a little worried as a pastor now. Too long ago. Yeah, all of you haven't had the opportunity I've had to preach it once a week for 5 weeks. So, let me gladly refresh your memory. What I preached on for Ash Wednesday was the story of David, when David wanted to take a census of his army. Does that start to get the wheels rolling a little? So the problem of the situation wasn't that David wanted to know how big his army was. The problem is that David wanted to rely on the strength of his army rather than the strength of God. And even going more, that David wanted to take credit for the strength of the army rather than God, who gave him these gifts in as a king. David was called each and every day to rely on God's strength and the strength that God gave David to be a good king. And we're called to do the same, to rely on that strength from God. Would somebody read this verse? And it'll go to the next page, so I'll flip it. Could somebody read that Bible passage for us, please, at the bottom? Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry, at the top there. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I love that. Um, I love the line. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. I like that passage because in the days of Isaiah, if you remember, the youths and the young men were kind of the backbone of the working society, meaning that they were the ones to go out into the fields to work. They were the ones who, when the season of battle came, that they were the ones who were depended on to lead. And even Isaiah is saying, even these men, the strongest men of your people, will fail. Even the strongest people that you have in your nation will get tired and will need that strength. And that's where we are reminded. It doesn't matter how strong we are, and not just physical strength, mental strength, emotional strength, spiritual strength. We are always reminded to rely on God in our lives. And that's why we're called to pray to God and to have that relationship with him, and then go to church to hear his word, to be renewed as often as we can through his word, and to rely on his strength and not just our own physical mortal strength. Does anybody have any thoughts about those two as we talked about last week? Okay. Let me read. I'm going to go to right there. Along with strength, we receive his assurance of grace when we fail. If my callings are God-given and not self-chosen, the amount and intensity of my failures are certainly multiplied and amplified. When I neglect a relationship, fail to exercise charity in a difficult situation, or refuse to bear a cross given, I sin against the living God because he has placed these things in my life. Let's ask another question, show of hands. And this one, I'm okay if you'd rather not open or raise your hand. That's okay. It's more of a personal question. Have any of you failed in your vocations or callings? Yeah. You know, this is one I think we as a society don't like talking about as often, because our failures, I mean, they hurt to talk about. It's difficult to be willing to admit, yeah, I failed. I messed up. I didn't do a good job here. Those are things that I truly believe as a pastor that it's difficult to talk about failure. I remember there was, when I was a youngin, and by youngin I mean like 22, I believe. I think I was 22. So, might have been 21. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I was working up at Camp Luther Haven, and I ran into a situation where I that I didn't handle a situation correctly. I ended up yelling at one of my counselors, and I mean I'm not just like I completely heated debate. Like I was in her face, I was calling her out, and I did it in front of many people at camp, and it was I felt absolutely horrible. I broke down in tears to my boss and um, uh, to my partner there, who held the same title as I did, who kind of we shared responsibilities, and it was a clear situation where I knew and everybody knew that I failed because I was supposed to. My role, I was supposed to be one who calmed the situation, um, who tried to make who should have been making the situation better, who should have said, "Let's go talk about this in a private location, not in front of everybody." But I made matters worse because I did not want to receive grace in the situation. I didn't want to. Um, I didn't want to accept the fact that I still had my calling and my vocation to serve in that capacity of being a program facilitator. I ended up getting under my covers of my bed, and I just didn't want to come out of my bed. Well, the morning comes and I missed the responsibility of being a program facilitator. I was supposed to go to Polar Bear that morning, which is, if you don't know, 7 o'clock, you wake up and you go jump in a freezing cold lake. Disgusting freezing cold lake, because the lake they have up at Camp Luther Haven is not a very sanitary lake. Let's put it that way. I made that commitment to my coworkers, and I honestly I just failed. I didn't want to show my face to anybody, and I I normally what would happen is when I needed to have a conversation with my boss Celine, she would call me on the radio. Zach, hey, I need to talk to you in my office. Whenever she would do that, I would get a little worried because I'd go, oh my gosh, am I in trouble? So I started having her say, Zach, I need you in my office. You're not in trouble. Just because I'm one who really gets worried about, waiting for a conversation. Okay, what did I do wrong? What's going on? I don't know. But this time she sent one of my coworkers and she went, Zach, Celine needs to talk to you. Did not mention, I knew I was in trouble. She chewed me out in her office, rightfully so, talking about how I made that commitment to my fellow coworkers to do this, and that I had let my failure turn into more failure, that I failed in my vocation, and then I was unwilling to handle the situation. I wanted to bury my head in the sand and pretend that nothing had happened and avoid everybody. It took me a while to understand is that I needed to have grace in that situation. Now, there's still consequences from failure, correct? That just because that, especially when we sin, yes, our sins are forgiven. That eternal damnation is taken away from us. And the reconciliation happens, which is a wonderful thing. But that doesn't mean that earthly consequences still aren't involved. Now, I was unwilling to face the earthly consequences, but I had to, and I had to sooner or later, but I had to recognize the fact that, yes, I failed. I needed to deal with that failure, but once again, I needed to enjoy God's grace, to recognize that God forgives, and remember that we do fail, and God is there for when we do fail. Go into the next Could somebody read that Bible verse for us, please? And I'll try to get it a little bigger, too. Oh, come on. Okay, can somebody read that for us, please? Propitiation. Thank you. I like that, or really a lot in the church, we know that line, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And we are very good at knowing that part, especially as Lutherans. We are very good at, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. It's kind of like how us Lutherans are very good at preaching the crucifixion. We are very good at it. We have some of the best Good Friday sermons out there. But we also have to remember the resurrection. And we also have to remember that grace that's given when we fail. And that's why I love the next part. And are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. Talk to me real quick. Because we've been talking about that word grace now. What does grace actually mean? What does the word grace mean? Undeserved mercy. I like that, Carol. And can we, or is it just, I love mercy, but is it just mercy? No. Oh, interesting. I like that. Getting what we don't deserve, but not getting what we do deserve. I would 100% stand by that. That's a wonderful that combination that work there. That was really good. I very much enjoy that because first off, it is undeserved. There is not, and that's what grace is. It's a gift that is undeserved, is not requested or asked for. It is something that God gives freely without any condition that he wants to give his people. Well, yes, it's because of the love that God has for us. That God freely gives us a gift out of pure love. That he does not want us to be left in our failure. I love that relationship between a parent and a small child because, I mean, that's another situation. Think how often children fail. Now, I not being mean about it, but I mean, let's be honest. Children fail quite often, don't they? They fail at different things like eating their veggies. They fail in picking up their toys. They fail in listening to their parents. They fail in not hitting their sibling. They fail in many, many different ways. And yet, as a parent, do you stop loving that child? Do you stop caring for that child? No. Do you stop teaching that child? No. You keep giving that gift of love and grace so that in the midst of failure, it's not just failure. And this is something that we have to live. I think this is one of the most important things that we got to remember in our vocations. We are very quick to remember the joys of our successes, and they should be remembered and thanked. And we should praise God for giving us that strength that we need in our daily lives to be successful. But once again, remembering when you fail, when you mess up, when you do not do what you are supposed to do, you got to face the earthly consequences of it, but do not dwell in it. Do not feel bad for yourself. Do not let it ruin your life, because God has given you grace out of that pure love that he has for you. Well, he wants us, that's a part of the relationship that we have with him. That it's true, he doesn't want us to do things by ourselves. He doesn't want us to be in a bubble on our own. He wants us to be together with other people. He wants us to have that relationship with him. Because when we isolate ourselves, when we make that, kind of looking at it this way, imagine a brick wall. Each brick wall, or each piece of this wall, each brick is a failure that we've had when there's times that we did not turn to God in our failure. We build that brick by brick, and trying to separate ourselves from God. But what happens when we've made a brick wall between us and God? That we end up don't wanting that gift of grace. We don't want to hear how God has loved us. We want to stay in our misery, and we can't stay in our misery because it eats away at us. It tears us apart, and it has mental problems that we can have, mental issues, emotional issues, spiritual issues, can easily turn into physical illnesses when we are unwilling to recognize look what God has done for us already. That God was willing to go to the cross and rise from the grave for you, to redeem you, so you are with him to the very end of the age. And by being with him truly means that while we're on earth, when we fail, we are not our failure. We are truly a child of God who will receive that gift of love. Undeserved, but that gift of love. I'd like to go into the last one here real quick. Granted, I say, oh yeah, we'll do something quick. How many times does your pastor say, oh, we'll do something quick, and then it's not quick? A lot. Emphasis on pastors, not one or the other. Both your pastors. Lucky all of you. Finally, seeing our callings as God-given also brings us joy. Every mouth we feed in his name, or act of sacrifice done for his sake, or persecution endured for him, or menial task received from his hand, brings a sense of satisfaction because they are done as from him and ultimately for him. The last question I may have for you this morning, and again, it's a personal question. Would you share with everyone one joy that you had from your vocations and callings this week? What joy, can you think of a joy that you had this week from your callings that God has given you? And please, I'd love for you if you'd raise your hand if you can think of any. Yeah. wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Are there any other examples? And it doesn't have to be a big one like helping save someone's life. But what are some other callings in life that that you got to experience joy from this week? Yeah. Uh huh. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Good. Keep them coming. These are great. What are some other joys that you guys had this week? Yeah, surely. Mhm. Good. Yeah. I mean that's a joy because of the fact that in your vocation as a sister that you get to experience her doing better. Good. I'm gonna keep asking for another minute or two. What else? How about one more? How about one more? Yeah, Clay. Mhm. You 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 told your students they had to go to school on Saturday for a makeup day. I think that's a good one to end on because Clay, that I think even as a joke, I mean we've had ones that are very serious, and then we've had some Clay that were more joking, and that's okay because joys look different in our vocations. Joys look different to each and every one of us. What even some that a joy for one person may not look like a joy for another. Yeah, Clay. Yeah. So even though Clay traumatized his students with marshmallows, I think it's a wonderful place to end our talk on the book. Whether or not we're in our lives, we're saving someone's life, or we are having a lot of fun with our students. We all have the joy and we get joys in our vocations of living out our lives. Sometimes it's going to be really hard. Sometimes our vocations have a lot of struggles, but we are reminded have fun in our vocations. Focus on those joys that we have because we're not supposed to live this life in sadness. We're not supposed to live this life in hopelessness. We live these lives in love and joy and happiness. It's not always easy, but that's where God's strength comes. Now go my brothers and sisters in Christ and live out our vocations faithfully each and every day. Receive the benediction. The Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen. God's blessings, everyone. Next week, there will be a Bible study devotion with church, so please make sure to come on out to the Easter breakfast. Thank you.